Welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report, the only show that provides you with the best insight and information to everything Franklin County sports. And now here's your host, Bobby C.
Hello and welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. I want to welcome you here today. A little bit of a hoarse voice. Very busy last week, and I got to tell you, the change of the temperatures have surely made a bit of a difference in a lot of us. It's funny how you run into people on the street and everybody sort of sounds the same. We sound like a bunch of folks that are trying to cast a opportunity to be the Godfather. And I'm not sure if I'm quite there yet, but it's glad to be able to be here for another week here on the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. Want to thank our wonderful producers, Philippe Simone and John Meisner. Also want to say a big thank you to our folks over at the FCAT, also at MCTV, Berniston Northfield Community Television, and of course our staff right here at GCTV. Want to say a big thank you to our underwriters, the Four Leaf Clover Restaurant located in Berniston, also by Denny's Pantry, Berniston Road in Greenfield, and by Lisa Alber of Alber Hearing Services, 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield. Well, we got a show that's going to be not only reflecting on the scores, but I'm going to talk a little bit about this upcoming tournament change that is going to be able to really change people's view of what it was like to be able to go for Western Mass Championships in the area and now going into a statewide tournament. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that because some new information came out about that this past week that I want to share with everyone, because I know that this is going to affect a lot of our athletes, and not only them, but it's going to affect our kids' families as well. I mean, how many people are going to get the time off to be able to go to these sporting events if the kids are playing in a second round playoff game that's 90 minutes away or 2 hours away? I mean, that's going to be a big problem for some of these people. And, you know, that's also taking away those fans that are there to root on the kids. So there's a lot of really what I call cons to this, and we'll talk about those cons coming up here on the show. Why don't we get things started for you with what happened last week? Well, last Monday, the chemistry of the Greenfield High School hockey team has just been awesome this year. And the one thing that I've noticed is that it's really been just phenomenal on what this team's been able to do this year. And they pulled off a really great win against Mount Everett last week, 5-1. You know, this team has just been able to do really good things because they have a talented team of all these great athletes that were kids that got together in the Franklin County Hockey Association, and now they're all playing together under the thumb of the Greenfield High School Green Wave. And it's all the Franklin County schools that their kids can come play for this one team. And it's wonderful because these kids have a lot of chemistry. Sean O'Sullivan ended up netting a hat trick, and he really had a wonderful game for them. You know, Brian Bauman, he's also been great as well. Aiden Roach, big help on this team. And what about Riley Drew? That kid has just been phenomenal. Being able to have a kid like him in the net has been a huge help for this team as well. You know, when you really talk about how things are going, Coach Adam Bouchard says that leadership in the locker room has just been incredible. Well, I think what it comes down to is these kids are friends. And you really think about how things happen in friendships that you have. When you have that awesome opportunity to be able to be involved with friends, it really makes things even better for you to be able to know that you're working together with someone that you trust and someone that you are really enjoying hanging out with. And I think that what this chemistry is all about is about the relationship that these kids have been able to build amongst each other since they were younger, playing in the Franklin County Hockey Association. So I think this has just been an awesome opportunity to bring hockey back to our area, to be very competitive, and to be able to see how much the Franklin County Hockey Association has benefited our athletes here in Franklin County. Well, there was a big game that happened last week, and we had a chance to be a part of it. It was our high school game of the week last week, and it was between the Mohawk Lady Warriors and the Turners Falls Girls. And it turned out that it was a lot of fun in our game of the week. And, we'll get to that in just a moment. But it was funny because they ended up playing 2 games in a week, is what happened. And in the first meeting that happened last Monday, it was the Mohawk Lady Warriors who finished strong and ended up beating the Thunder in a game that was final score of 42-37. If you talk to the head coach of Mohawk, Larissa Harrison, she'll tell you that the biggest thing about the win was the fact that they were more patient on the offensive end, and they were able to put up 42 points in the victory. And the thing is Turner's was leading by 4 going into the fourth quarter, and then they ended up losing by 5. So that 7-point swing ended up being a big deal. Make that a 9-point swing. And that was the difference on how Mohawk was able to pull off that victory a week ago of the Monday game last week. When you talk to Coach Ed Marvel, he'll tell you that they kept themselves in the game the whole time. The things that we ended up hurting ourselves in was extra rebounding, which I think has been a problem for the Thunder throughout the year, is some of that rebounding. And it's funny because with the big body that they have of Lily Spira and also the aggressiveness of Haley Bogus, you would think that it would be a little easier for them to be able to pull down some more bounds. But that's one of the things that they have been really struggling on this year. But you think about what has really happened for Turner's Falls and for Mohawk. Well, Mohawk has great leadership with the great player in Grace Poplowski. She's just been awesome. They also have Grace Ward. They also have Maya LaShure. Those are the 3 big girls that have been able to get it done for their program. But on the other side, you think about the scoring for Turner's. It's done by an 8th grader and a freshman for getting a lot of their points, and that is Taylor Green, who's in 8th grade, and Kendra Campbell, who is a freshman. So the future of really seeing Turner's Falls get to that next level is really looking bright right now, and especially knowing that those 2 girls have put the huge commitment into AAU basketball and extra time to be able to practice the game that those 2 ladies love to play. They do have their senior class of girls. Of course, Dabney Rollins has been out with an injury for the Turner's Falls Thunder. Also, Coach Marvel has really given the younger girls a lot more of the playing time. Haley Bogus has definitely been a big factor on a senior that they really need. You look at some of the other ones that are there with Whiteman and her being able to handle the ball as one of the guards. She's a senior. You also have Eliza Johnson in there too, another girl who can handle the ball pretty well. But the bottom line is that Coach Marvel has made this decision that he wants to play a lot of these younger girls, and that's what he's doing. And really, I'll tell you, they're really missing Dabney Rollins because her experience, her big body down low, and her aggressiveness and her willing to score has been something that this team could use as that little extra spark to be able to get them closer to having an opportunity at a tournament berth. But it was a tough one last week. They were up by 4 going into the fourth quarter, but Turner's ended up getting beat in their first meeting last week with Mohawk. Final score was 42-37. Well, Greenfield and their girls ended up knocking off Pioneer. Final score was 49-37 last week. Katie Hazelton took over the fourth quarter for the Green Wave, and she was on fire. How about this? The junior ends up scoring 26 points. And she ended up getting herself into some foul trouble in that first half where Coach Hickey even had to sit her down for a few minutes. But Lily Kackelmeyer ended up with 8 points. Also, Brianna Rivera and Tina Reed, well, they ended up with 6 each. Paige Loftman showing why she's one of the best guards in all of Western Mass. She ended up with 21 points for Pioneer in the loss. Well, in boys basketball, last Monday, it was the Franklin County Tech taking on Gateway. Final score was 56-42. Garrett Cole put together a monster outing. How about this for numbers here, folks? 21 points, 17 rebounds. That is a solid double-double right there. Also, Franklin County Tech picking up the win. That's always nice as well. The Eagles right now are a couple games over 500, which is a great sign for them as they want to get into tournament play. You know, their coach, Tim Artis, said, you know, we came out with some good intensity at the beginning of the game. Did get away from us a little bit in the second quarter, but then we came back in the second half. We got things together and we ended up picking up the win. Justin Littlewood ended up with 12 points. He also pulled down 7 rebounds. Bailey Young also in double figures last week with the win. He ended up with 10. Well, Westside ended up knocking off the Frontier boys in a game where Frontier could not find the basket at all. They ended up losing this one 53-35. A very slow start for the Red Hawks in this one. But I will tell you, they ended up only being down 6 at halftime. And then they came out really flat in that second half, and it really cost them as they ended up getting beaten this one by 18. Sean Richter ended up with 10 points. Also, Ethan Michon ended up with 7, and Colin Boudreau ended up with 6 in the loss for Frontier. Want to welcome you to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C., a little on the horse side here today. We'll just say Bobby C., the horse guy, all right? And once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the new format that's going to be coming up soon. Of course, it is going to go to a vote, but a lot of the people over there in the good old Boston market are feeling it's fine to be able to have this statewide tournament happen in all sports here in Massachusetts, and we'll get into that in just a bit. Want to thank the Four Leaf Clover Restaurant, also Denny's Pantry, and Lisa Albert of Albert Hearing Services, located at 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield, for being our underwriters here today. Well, on Tuesday last week, it was the Mohawk Trail Boys basketball team. They took on Greenfield. And let me tell you something. Going into this game, everybody thought Greenfield was going to blow them off the court. Well, that didn't happen. Matter of fact, Angelo Thomas was not happy with the way that his team played. But you know what's nice is that as a coach, sometimes you got to tell your kids that, hey, this is your job, not mine. You got to get out there, you got to make those adjustments, and you got to fix what's going on. So that's exactly what he did, too. And he ended up getting his kids a little bit into a place where they needed to get a little spark, and they got a spark from a kid named Sam Gibson, who really did a wonderful job being able to get his team fired up. And they ended up pulling off a victory 62-55 up there at Mohawk, where at times Mohawk was leading in this one. Angelo Thomas said the energy level really picked up for us, especially in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, it was okay too, and that was because of the energy of a guy that we needed. And we're so glad that Sam Gibson was the guy that was willing to step up and give us that big spark. He penetrated, he had some great assists, he made some shots. He definitely helped us be able to pick up the win. It's the little things that mean a lot. Well, Gibson, I'm going to tell you right now, what he did was the things that sometimes people need to understand. It's not always about who scores the most points. It's about who can get your team being able to be confident and to be ready to be able to do the damage. And what happened is in that fourth quarter, they did do the damage and they did pick up the 7-point win. But I'm going to tell you right now, Tyler Dubriel ended up having a wonderful game for Mohawk. He ended up with 17 points. You know, Tyler really has come a long way in his 2 years that he's been on varsity, according to their coach, Darren Schmidt. He said that he's worked hard in practice, and you can see that it's showing in the games as well. A lot of our guys brought a lot of energy, and they really played great defense, and that's exactly what they did to be able to hold Greenfield, a team that can definitely score a lot of points when everybody's on. Maverick Ward, well, he ended up with 15 points on the day. Mason Meadows, he was only held to 11. Their big guy was definitely shut down in this one by Mohawk, but it was nice to see other kids able to step up. Well, in a girls' game that was played last Tuesday, it was Frontier, as the Frontier girls ended up having a game against Athol, and they ended up winning this one. Final score was 65-36. defense was just incredible. And if you talk to Coach Michon, he'll tell you that the defense really created the turnovers, and the turnovers turned into offense. And, if you can be able to do that, that's how you get to be able to score this many points in your night. To have 65 points in a girls' basketball game is very impressive. Well, it was because of the little things that they did. Another solid night for great people like Amelia Sobieski. She ended up having a solid night, as well as Marie Demond, Megan Self. They ended up with big nights. Also, Kylie LaFond. So these girls did good work for this Red Hawks team. So a nice win for them over Athol last week. Well, the Turner's girls, remember we talked about early in the week, they ended up having their loss by 5 to the Mohawk girls. Well, it was their chance to go up there to Mohawk, and it was our game of the week, and we had a chance to be up there as well. And really, it was all about the Thunder in match number 2. They picked up the 45-36 victory. And I will tell you that they have some girls that were able to get things done. And Kendra Campbell, like we were saying, her and Taylor Green doing a lot of the scoring for this Thunder team. Well, she ended up scoring 14 points. Lily Spira had 7. Steph Peterson, Taylor Green, and Haley Bogus each had 6 in the win. Nice balanced scoring here for the Thunder in that victory. The one thing that they had to remember is they had to stop Grace Pawlowski, and they did that very well because she only scored 15 for her team, where she was averaging a little bit more than that. Stella Clark ended up with 11. Grace Ward ended up with a big day. She had 6 points, but she pulled down 10 rebounds, and she blocked 9 shots on the day. Can you imagine that? 9 blocked shots. That's a pretty successful day. Think about this. You end up losing by 9, but she blocked 9 shots, so she took away 9 possessions away from the Thunder. So if they ended up having an opportunity to be able to score on all 9 of those, you can just imagine on what this score could have really been last week. It was our game of the week right here on Greenfield Community Television. Well, in boys basketball last week, Northampton took on Greenfield. Mason Meadows knocked down a couple of three-pointers, ended up with 16 points, pulled down 17 rebounds, and that still wasn't enough for the Green Wave to beat the Blue Devils. Greenfield, really, they held the lead for the majority of the game, and then they sort of fell apart. They really competed well in this one, but the mental part has been the problem with this team, and that's exactly what happened and why they got beat. Maverick Ward added 7 points. He grabbed 15 rebounds. Henry Swart, also Julius Brewington, ended up with 9 for the Green Wave. Well, it was a tough one for the hockey team. They took on Wacona High School. Matter of fact, if you talk to some of the folks that were at that game, they'll tell you that they thought that the Green Wave got ripped off on one of the goals that they should have had scored, and it would have been a tie at 4-4, but that didn't work out that way. He said that it was a wild second period, and really what happened in the end here is that Wacona picked up the 4-3 victory. Brian Bauman scored 2 goals in the second period for the Green Wave. Also, Shane Prusak ended up scoring a first period goal off an assist from Kyle Barnes and also Jacob Bryant. And it was a tough one. The Wave ends up losing to Wacona last week in hockey, 4-3. Well, got a wrestling score for you that Athol ended up beating the Franklin County Tech. But I want to let you know that here is what the stinky part of this is. And what people don't understand is that when you're in wrestling, if you can't fill one of the weight classes, you automatically lose, and the team gets what they call a forfeit. And the forfeit is worth 6 points. So here's what happened. Despite winning 4 of the 6 wrestle matches that were in this one, Athol, because of the situation of them being able to win because of the forfeits, they end up picking up the 36-30 win. My attitude is this, and this is just where I come in. I feel that if you have to forfeit, it should only be 2 points. That's it. Shouldn't be a full 6. And this way, at least if you go out and you compete with the weight classes that you are going there with, and if you are undermanned, that if you can win those matches, you can still have a chance to get a victory. And I sort of think that that's sort of deceiving if you think about it, because the way I look at it as the Franklin County Tech ended up winning because they won 4 of those 6 matches that were wrestled that night. I'll tell you what, Kyle Burnell, him and his brother Josh have had an excellent year for the Franklin County Tech this year. Congratulations goes out to them. You know, them and their other kids on their program have been really battling this year. I think the biggest problem is that they're losing these matches because of the forfeits that they are giving up by not being able to fill those weight classes. Well, the Turners Falls High School boys basketball team, well, they ended up taking on Marhar Regional. And I'm going to tell you something right now. The Turners Falls boys, they really heated up from long range, and they ended up picking up a victory that they needed. Final score was 57-44. I'm going to tell you, though, Anthony Peterson had himself a great night. Matter of fact, Anthony Peterson ended up with 24. Chase Novak ended up with 19. So between the two, if you really think about it, they ended up scoring pretty much most of the points for Turners in this one. A nice opportunity for them to pick up a win that they really needed. Peterson said that it was all about teamwork in this one. We've been working hard in practice, getting open shots, realizing that we got to play a little bit better on the defensive end as well. And that's been one of their biggest problems. And I've been talking about this problem that they've been having with defense since we started at the beginning of the basketball season. And what I've been stressing is the fact that if you're going to score 57 points, you got to let up less than 50 so you can be able to pick up these wins. But what's happened is they'll score 50, but they'll let up 60, and they end up getting beat by 10. And it just makes it so sad that a team that works so hard on the offensive end can't get back in transition to get back on the defensive end, and you're just sort of trading baskets. And then if you're missing your shots and the other team's making them, that is why they're pulling off these wins against your team. So hopefully things will start getting a little better here in the second half of the season for the Boys Thunder team over there in Turners. In girls basketball, it was the Franklin County Tech girls. They ended up picking up a victory over Westfield Tech. Final score was 71-22. Let me say that again, 71-22. A 49-point victory. Wow, that is very impressive. Matter of fact, it was their season high to be able to score 71 points. You know, the Tech girls are on fire right now. They, as of last week, going into the Wednesday outings, are sitting with a record of 7-2. So that's very solid right there. Girls have worked hard. They've executed well. Coach Joe Gamache is very happy with what the girls have been able to do. Let's talk about some of these great scoring in this one. You had Jordan Hurlbert. She ended up with a season-high 19 points, 11 rebounds. Isabel Duga, 16 points, a season-high for her. She had 5 steals. Jocelyn Crowningshield, 15 points. Jemmy Cruz with 11 points and 10 rebounds. That's a solid day right there for the girls from the Franklin County Tech School. Well, it was an easy 33-point win for the girls from Greenfield over Ware. Yeah, they won 64-33 last week. And I'm going to tell you right now that Lily Kackelmeyer, she ended up with a season-high 14. She's only a freshman here, folks, and she had her 3rd double-digit scoring output of the season. Also, Raquel Provost ended up with 13 of her own. Her 3rd double-digit scoring total of the season as well. Tina Reed ended up with 12 points. Katie Hazelton with 11. Also, Brianna Rivera ended up with 8 points in the victory, and even Eva Pruitt-Dahl and Tess Rancourt had a few points as well as the Wave all over Ware, 64-33. In girls swimming, it was Ludlow all over Turners Falls girls, but the trio of Jade Tyler, Allison Wheeler, and Olivia Whittier all captured individual victories. Tyler ended up taking the 200-yard individual medley. Yep, she did it well. Also, Wheeler, she ended up winning the 100 free, and Whittier snagged top honors in the breaststroke. The three swimmers also teamed up with Hannah Marhefka, and they ended up getting first in the 200 medley, their relay team. On the boys' side, Ludlow ends up having no problem against Turner's 89-26. Cam Bradley, he ended up tying for first place in the 100 butterfly. Even though they did get beat, the senior ended up scoring a share of first place with a time of just about 1 minute. He also teamed up with Camden Bonnet, as well as Austin Sumner and Nick Martin, and they finished second in the 200 freestyle relay. Martin was runner-up in the 100 free in that match as well. Want to welcome you to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C., a little on the horse side here today. A little more monotone than what I'm used to, that's for sure. But we're here, we're delivering the message, and we're letting you guys know that these kids have done well right now. We got some teams that are really getting it done. We got some other teams that are struggling a little bit, but you know what? We're not even halfway through the season yet. So we don't want to get ourselves too far away. You know, the old saying, don't put the cart before the horse. Let the kids be able to play out the season and see what happens. Right now, some of these teams are still trying to find themselves and being able to figure out the recipe for victory. Well, last week, we had a game that was played between the Hamden Charter School and the Franklin County Tech boys. And I'm going to tell you something. The Tech boys went on a 12-0 run to close out a game where they were down. They ended up winning by 3 after being down 59-50. Check this out. With 1:37 left in the game, they literally went on a 12-0 run in a matter of a minute and 37 seconds. That is what you call a huge comeback. And it was because of their intensity and what they were able to do to be able to dig deep to figure out how they could win the game. Coach Artis said that this was a huge win for us. We learned a lot. We also learned that if we work together as a group and we all play together, look what we were able to do in a minute and 37 seconds to be able to go on that 12-0 run. I'm telling you, though, Garrett Cole's been awesome this year. How about this? 21 points, 20 rebounds on the night. That is just incredible. This kid right here is one of the top basketball players here in our area. And, of course, he does play for the Franklin County Tech School. I always say that you always have some of these kids that are playing in a different competition when they're going up against some of these other schools that are more your vocational type schools. But I'm going to tell you right now, when you think about Bay State Academy and some of these other schools that are down there that are pretty good, to be able to see big numbers from him, that's excellent. And that number of 20 rebounds and 21 points, that is impressive. I'm telling you, that is really, really good. And Bailey Young, he ended up with a game-high 25 on the day for the Franklin County Tech. So if you really add up the 62 points and you add those two guys together, they had 46 of those points just between those two players. Well, the Franklin County, Frontier girls ended up taking on Southwick, picked up another victory. That was on the road last Thursday night. Final score was 43-30. And, you know, you talk to Coach Bashan, he'll tell you that, yeah, we took on a winless team on the road, but the bottom line is that we had to come out and play. Well, yeah, you did, because really you only won by 13, and it was nice to be able to get the victory on the road. But he said, quote, never really felt like we had the upper hand, and really they could have come back at any time. It was a good test for us. Well, bottom line is they did pick up the 13-point victory. Amelia Sobieski, well, she ended up with a double-double. She had 11 points and 12 rebounds. Caitlin Mackin, she ended up in double figures with 10 points. Marie Demon ended up with 9. Megan Self with 8. Tell you, those 4 girls are the team's offense for Frontier. Well, it was East Hampton knocking off Pioneer in a really good game. And this was one of those back-and-forth games all night long. and the Panthers came up 4 points short. But Paige Loftman, another great night for her. She ended up with 21 points in the loss. Alina Sesajanin, she ended up with a career-high 11. Also, Steph Scoville ended up with a double-double with 10 points and 14 rebounds. Hopkins Academy had no problem last week against Turner's Falls. In that game that we did as our game of the week, one of their top players, Kendra Campbell, she ended up getting hurt. She hurt her wrist during that game. She ended up having to leave the game. She ended up going to the hospital, had some x-rays done, and what happened is that she ended up spraining her wrist pretty bad, and she wasn't able to play in that game against Hopkins. And that ended up being a tough one because one of their scorers is definitely Kendra, and they only put 25 points up on the night. But I will say that Taylor Green and Lily Spira, they carried the offense for Turner's Falls. 9 points for Green and 8 for Spira in the loss. Well, in boys basketball last week, it was Duggan Academy knocking off the Pioneer Boys. You know, Pioneer Boys ended up getting 20 points from Troy Emon, but that wasn't even enough. And even with Hubbard scoring 10, Ryan Potter with 11, still didn't get it done. But here's a stat that really hurts when you end up losing. How about this? They went 6 for 20 from the free throw line. They had 20 opportunities at the line, and they only made 6. Now, that is a really tough stat. I can guarantee you that Coach Scotty Thayer had his kids in the gym this week shooting free throws because that's something that's going to give you a chance to win games down the road. Well, they had the big ski meet, and a name that we've been talking about all winter is Mohawk's Taylor Loomis. Found herself in first place again in the ski meet they had over at Berkshire East last Thursday. She has just been solid. And Corianne Delaney also finished 4th. She is a solid player for Frontier. So between Loomis from Mohawk and Corianne Delaney from Frontier, they are the 2 top skiers in this area. On the boys' side, Weston Den Oden ended up topping all of the Franklin County placers with the 8th place finish, and Ben Martino from Frontier, he ended up placing in the top 20 at number 17. Want to welcome you to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. We ended up having a little bit of inclement weather last week as well, so a couple of the games ended up not being played. So there's a few scores that we're going to miss out on this week. And, of course, what about that storm that we ended up having on Saturday? Wow, that was pretty something, huh? You know, that weather that we had on Saturday going into Sunday, you know, that really doesn't help your weekend sports as well. But the bottom line is that this is the time of year where you just never know whether you're going to get a beautiful day or you're going to get a day where the kids end up having a snow day and end up not being able to play some of these sporting events. But there was a game that was played, and that was the game between Greenfield and Marhar, and what a game that was. Score at one time with 49 seconds to play in the game was Greenfield up by 5, 60-55. But guess what? A three-pointer from the Senators ended up making it 60-58. And all of a sudden, things just sort of just went the way of the Wave, and the Wave ended up picking up that victory by 2 points, 60-58. What a great game that was. Matter of fact, the Senators had a chance to tie with a layup, but it was missed at the buzzer, and the Wave pick up the 2-point win in Greenfield. Henry Zwart ended up with 20 points. He knocked down 4 3-pointers that he ended up having in that one. Mason Meadows had 13 points. He had 12 rebounds. Mav Ward ended up with 8 points, pulled down 15 rebounds for Greenfield. Here's the thing. Mav Ward is pulling down more rebounds than Mason Meadows, who's got Mav Ward by about 3 inches. So great work by the freshman in Mav Ward for the Green Wave. Also in boys basketball last Friday, it was Turner's Falls boys knocking off Smith Academy. Final score was 54-40. Couple of nice wins for Turner's Falls last week. Chase Novak, 17 points. Anthony Peterson, 13 points, 13 rebounds in the win. Marcus Sanders did a great job running the offense as well. He had 9 points, and he dished out 7 assists for the Thunder. Well, it was Frontier with a win over Belchertown. Final score was 52-37. Frontier boys did a nice job being able to get things together, especially in the second half. Peter Carey ended up having 22 points. Also, Colin Boudreau ended up having 8 points. Donovan Hoffman, Brett Robinson each had 6 in the win for the Red Hawks. Pioneer boys, they went up to Mohawk and took on the Warriors. After a great outing that they ended up having against Greenfield, Mohawk ended up not scoring very well in this one. Final score was 57-39. 39 points isn't going to get you a win unless you play stellar D, and Pioneer picked up a win that they needed. 24 points in this one for Troy Emon from the Panthers. Also, Jared Hubbard ended up with 15 points. Sam Glazier ended up with 6. Anthony Moffitt, Ruben Bassett, they each had 9 points for the Warriors. Girls basketball last week, another win for the Franklin County Tech girls. Their offense wasn't really there, but I'm going to tell you what, their defense was. Final score was 36-20, but here's a number I want to bring up to you. They literally had given up 12 points in the fourth quarter. After 3 quarters, they only let up 8 points of offense from Pathfinder. Nice win for them. Tech Eagles, they're really getting it done this year. Jocelyn Crowning-Shield, how about 14 points for her? Emily Ryan, 2 points, 6 rebounds. Putnam ends up beating the Mohawk girls. Grace Poplowski ends up with 19 points in the loss. Final was 45-37. Girls worked hard in that one. Matter of fact, Putnam, they're a very physical team, but they were able to stay in it. The girls had a chance to win Mohawk, but they came up short, 45-37. Grace Ward had 8. Maya LaSure had 6 in the loss. All right, that is what we have for sports from last week. Let's talk about this upcoming tournament thing, and then we'll wrap it up for this week for you. But I want to let you know that we do have a game of the week that is coming up this week. It is our game between the Greenfield boys and the Pioneer boys. So it should be a good matchup between the two teams. You got the inside game that you're going to have of Mav Ward also with Mason Meadows. You think about what they have for the attack of driving the basket with Troy Emon from Pioneer. You got the outside game that you're going to have with great scoring from Jared Hubbard. You also got Ryan Potter, who shoots well from outside as well. The bottom line is who's going to have the least amount of turnovers, and will Henry Zwart end up doing a nice job with Sam Gibson being able to run the guards for the Wave? We're going to find out as all part of our game of the week this week on Greenfield Community Television. So we've had forever Western Mass Championships in all of our sports. And it always brought up a lot of excitement because we would have matchups of teams that the kids all knew each other. Well, now they're coming up with a format that they want to have throughout the state, that they want to be able to say, here's the deal. We are going to run a situation where we're going to have a statewide tournament with 5 divisions in every sport, except for hockey will only have 3, and there'll be a couple of other sports, including lacrosse, that will only have 3 as well. But the bottom line is that all of our teams in our area here in Franklin County are going to be all Division 5 teams because of the small community we are. But here's the thing here, folks. Every school's got to be placed in a division. There's a lot of schools that are out in Central Mass and even in the Boston area that are still a lot bigger than our schools, but they got to get put in a division. So some of these schools are going to be put in to Division 5, which means that they probably will have a better team than some of our teams out here. That means that the kids are going to have to drive all the way to that school to play a tournament game. Well, what it's come down to is the MIAA has decided that they are going to work with being able to literally have a statewide tournament. By doing this, it's going to really affect a lot of things. The one thing that I can't stand is the fact that how many of these fans are going to really jump in the car and drive an hour and a half or 2 hours for an hour and a half game. That's going to hurt a lot. So you know what that's going to have to do is, I'm going to tell you right now, I think what could be a very beneficial thing is if they could be able to get the MIAA to be able to start getting camera crews of people that can be able to cover these games and have them online so that people can be able to view them, because how many people are going to travel across the state to come support their team when they got to do a lot of the traveling? The ones who are going to suffer the most in this are the older folks. How many times does grandma and grandpa like to come watch their grandchild play? And they love to come out and enjoy the kids. Well, are they going to really make the trek across the state to go drive 2 hours at night to be able to go watch their grandchild play? Well, some will, but the majority probably will end up having to stay home, which really takes away from the extra support that these kids are going to get from the fans and even the community. The only thing I could think of is if you want to be able to get the kids to come, you're going to have to literally work out a situation where you're going to have to be able to charge like $3 per person, and you're going to have to literally load up a bus, and you're going to have to bus the students in. Might even be $5 a head. Now what you're doing is the MIAA is going to charge the kids $5 to get in the game. Then you got to pay $5 for the transportation to get there. So now it's costing the kids $10. And the game's only going to last an hour and a half, and you're going to drive possibly 2 hours down, 2 hours back. You're going to get there a half hour before the game. Then you got to load everybody up after the game. It ends up being a 7-hour day just to go watch one game. This is the kind of stuff that's going to happen with this new format, which I honestly think, folks, is going to be a disaster. A lot of the athletic directors throughout the state are not happy about it. The problem is we have a very small amount of schools here in Western Mass. The Boston market has a lot more. They want this system. So if they end up getting the majority of the schools to vote that they want it, then guess what? We're out of luck. Imagine being a good basketball team like the Hoosick girls, who are just phenomenal. And you're going to tell me that they're going to come all the way from Hoosick Valley and drive all the way down and take on a Boston team on a Tuesday night? Or that Boston team, because Hoosick is that good, is going to literally drive from Boston up to the Berkshires to go play Hoosick girls, to get beat by 30, and then have to drive 2.5 hours home, hour and a half game, hour before to get there? There's a 7-hour day right there. Plus the kids got school too. I just think this whole thing is a disaster. And I don't know what your take is, but as I'm explaining this to you, you're sort of getting an idea of what this could be like for sports. And this is for every sport that we have, not just basketball, not just hockey, not just gymnastics, not anything. It's every single sport. So when we start getting more information, we're going to share it with you. And that way you can be updated on what's going on with this big mess that could happen here in Massachusetts sports. Want to thank you very much for joining me. Very sorry that we got such the monotone voice here today, but this is the way it is, man. And 'tis the season to be jolly. Thank you, Philippe Simone. Thank you, Johnny Meisner. Appreciate all your help, gentlemen. Also want to thank Greenfield Community Television, our underwriters, the 4 Leaf Clover Restaurant, Denny's Pantry, and Albert Hearing Services, and Lisa Halber. Thank you all for being a part of the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. Don't forget about our Game of the Week. You can check out our Game of the Week on our YouTube page at gctv.org. You know what? You go right onto YouTube and you can be able to just punch in the Game of the Week, and it'll be nice. you'll be able to enjoy these games. And I want to thank each and every one of our underwriters that are making this happen during the winter season. Get out there, support your local teams, and have yourself a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report.
Catch a game, and be sure to join us next time. Thanks for watching the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report on GCTV. Catch a game, and be sure to join us next time for more sports and fun.